So I would like to really thank all of you. 5:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. And so hopefully you got some snacks. We'll be here for about an hour. And I'm really interested in different types of businesses you're all in. I had the opportunity to speak to a couple of you. So one of the things that has really started off this evening started off thinking about, what kind of topic do startups as well as ongoing companies really have to really fight through at the start of the year. And lo and behold, January has started to be a very tumultuous business year and it's carried on into February. So it came to the thought that maybe one of the things that really is troublesome for a lot of companies, especially companies when I was running them, was inventory. And inventory is really one of those things where you can't and this is my opinion only. You can't science your way out of inventory control. It really takes the entrepreneur to understand their business and to go ahead and use their inventory in such a way that it becomes an investment rather than an expense. So what I'm going to do right now, how many of you have heard of the Bermuda Triangle? I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to start off right now. Share my screen. Yell out if you can see it. One of the dangers of Zoom is I keep talking and no one can see a screen. So
Oh, good.
hopefully all of you can see the screen. Is
Yes.
yet nobody's good. All right. So it's an inventory triangle where profits disappear. So we're all familiar with the Bermuda Triangle. And this is a famous area in which ships, planes, and whatever crosses into that triangle sort of mysteriously disappear. And for a lot of businesses, there's a triangle where profits sort of disappear. And this is that triangle. Customer demand, inventory availability, inventory costs. And if we control those, we end up with profits. So if we don't control those profits may end up going someplace else. So one of the questions, when I ask is, have you ever wondered how can I manage inventory better? So
Yes.
yeah, I see heads nodding, and the question answer the question is yes. So what do you think is the one of the better ways in which to approach this question? Any ideas? I like to talk story to people who comes to the workshops. Any ideas? What's a good way to perhaps one way to manage your inventory? Anybody?
With an inventory tracking system, a warehouse management system.
Yeah, absolutely. So Janice, you're absolutely right. You need some form of tracking system. What I had in mind was something I have been doing in my previous career, and that's creating a merchandising plan. A merchandising plan reduces the chances that inventory investment becomes an expense. And the reason I say that is whenever you have inventory, there's two ways to look at inventory. It's an expense to start or an investment. I really like to have people think the inventory in my warehouse is an investment. If you take that mindset and investment, then it's going to grow. If you start off with the thought process that's things that's in my warehouse, product, uh, it's in that warehouse, it's an expense and you're worried about it, then you may run into problems. And so the best way I found is to create a merchandising plan. At one point in my career, I was a merchandising vice president for one of the largest global companies. And we had to manage my main job in merchandising was to control inventory. And the only way we could do that was to create a merchandising plan. So this evening, what we're going to be talking about is how to do a simple merchandising plan. So these are the goals of a plan. Meeting customer demand at this point, with the economy poised as it is to be a little bit tumultuous in the first quarter at least, meeting customer demand is huge. Also, minimizing your holding costs. This is where if you don't have inventory moving at the right pace, that cost of holding the inventory in your warehouses or wherever you store it is going to rise. And especially with the high interest rates that's still, playing around, that's going to be costly. The most costly of all is avoiding stockouts. And I'm going to speak heavily towards avoiding stockouts. The reason you want to avoid stockouts is if you're always out of stock, where do you think your customer is going to go? Going to go someplace else. And the other one is that you have efficient cash flow. If your merchandising is flowing to your customer base at a really good pace, you don't have to have additional loans. You won't have money sitting in a warehouse in the form of inventory. The last one is in maintaining accurate records. A lot of small businesses where they have a hard time is maintaining accurate records, which then translate to inventory being off or their sales being off and the customer satisfaction being off. So maintaining accurate records is really important. So this is the benefits. Capital and carrying costs, they go down. Inventory stock outs, they go down. Profitability and cash, that goes up. Customer satisfaction and loyalty goes up. And this is the things that, when you get into a merchandising plan, this is what you want to happen. So any questions right now? Now, here's the thing. This is really a talk story session. If you got a question, just yell it out.
I have a
And
question.
yeah, go ahead, Alexandra.
So I am pre-launch. So
Huh?
my plan, I'm hoping for like November 2025. I'm creating like an 8-month plan. I'm going to do a little beta test. Like I bought 500 units, friends, family, try to sell some, a lot of it just giving away and getting customer feedback so I can really
Mhm.
like define that target market. But when you're saying like you need to like forecast it and like plan it and your merchandising plan, so I bought like 500 units of all the packaging and stuff. And then I started talking to another CPG small business here, and she started with 20. And I was like, 500 is a little different than 20. I have no idea what I'm doing. So can you, like, when you say like merchandising plan, are there like numbers that we should be like thinking about as startups, or because I feel like I'm making it up. I don't come from like food and beverage. I don't come from CPG. So it's been like super fun learning, but also, yeah.
Oh, great question. And as a startup, these are all questions that you'll be answering very shortly. The next slide will show you a very simple merchandising plan and how to create one. And that's what we're going to be investing the rest of the evening on until 6:30 is looking at these 4 areas of a merchandising plan, which is sales forecasting, assortment planning, availability and stocking levels, and lastly, inventory management. Okay, and this is a really simplified version. The ones that I used to use in my previous career had multiple different layers, but for a startup or even for small businesses, this is a nice way to get things in order so you can control your inventory, especially in the economic type of situation we're having this first couple of months in 2025. So one of the things, they said, well, if it's all forecast, I can get some, AI to do that. Here's what I'd like to say. Everything we're going to be talking about tonight, you can do it AI, but I find through experience and to working with multiple corporations, large and small, that everything we're talking about, yeah, AI can help, but it's really the entrepreneur or the business owner who has the final decision to make. So when we look at the art of Salesforce, it's purely art, right? I had 31 years in the international market, various levels, and always had to do with some kind of sales forecast. And over the years, and I'm still a consultant, it's still the art of the business owner. So the first thing to take a look at is the historical trends. So what you've been doing, so in your case, Alexander, you don't have any trends, but you do have the lean launch methodology where you go out and you talk to people, you leave the building, and you get some ideas. But for me, there are 2 ways that most businesses track. The one most common way is businesses track the dollar revenue as a way of historical trends. That's great, but from a merchandising standpoint, I like to track units sold. And the reason is that the dollars, if you track dollars, it may be misleading because you're looking at dollars, but you're not looking at actual units that's sitting in your warehouse or moving to your supply chain or moving to your customers. By tracking the units, you can actually see what the pace of your business is because for every unit, you got a dollar attached to it. So when we look at historical trends, you look at by month, by quarters, a year, I usually like to look at in terms of quarters. And so, oh, Dad, why quarters? Why 3 months increments? 1 month is too small. 1 year is too long. The best one is quarters, and the reason is that you can find trends as well as seasonal trends in quarters. By looking at the 3 month forecast, you can pretty much go ahead and look at by season what's going to happen just by your past experience, what's going to happen in the next 2 quarters. And so one of the things interesting in historical trends is that I used to work for a company and we had to get products from Japan. And Japanese companies have a term called yote. Yote means you put a 1 year forecast in. And every quarter you update that forecast. And as you all know, Japan works on just-in-time inventory. They're not going to build it until it's ready to ship. So one of the things that's really interesting from the Yoti system is that we submitted a 1 year projection of sales, and we looked at every quarter. We looked at every quarter because we had to update our forecast. And if we were wrong, we would get too much inventory or too little inventory. So this is how, I want all of you to look at your historical trends. Just look at, is it moving? How is it moving? Is it moving up? Is it down? In by months and by quarters. Then you'll have this idea of how many units are moving, but then you can attach the dollars to it. Any questions about that? And only an owner will understand the little bumps that happens in that trend. Once we have this idea, once we have this, this skeleton of an idea of why these inventory is moving and what's going to be moving, looking like, you start to look at different things that's going to affect that forecast. One is promotions. What type of promotions did you run? What type of promotions you didn't run? This is, again, areas you look at. So a historical trend is a static trend. It's stuff that happened. Market changes takes into effect what can be done in the future to affect what's going to happen in the next several months. So you have to look at promotions. All right, what you look at last year, you sold 10 units in January. This year, you say, oh, maybe I do a straight line forecast. I'll predict 11. But you look back and you say, well, we didn't run a promotion in January of 2024. What happens if we do a promotion in 2025? Maybe that forecast jumps to 15. Again, you have to look in front. The other one is seasonality. What season are we in right now? Any idea? At any given point, you have 2 seasons. Anybody have an idea why I say at any given point you have 2 seasons? How about you, Teresa? Any idea? Why did I say? Why did I say? Dax says there's always going to be at any given point 2 seasons. No, okay. Teresa, I don't know. I like to make my chips. The seasonality is always going to be 2: the one that's starting and the one that's ending. And that will change. Right now, we're in winter, and for Hawaii, it really doesn't matter. But for the U.S. mainland, it matters because it's winter, and in a couple of maybe about 60 days from now, it'll start to defrost and start to become spring. Winter's ending, spring is started. So when we're looking at these forecasting, we have to look at what season are we in, what are we leaving, what are we entering. again, to make that forecast. Does that make sense? The other one is competitive activity. What's your competition doing? Are they asleep? Are they active? And how have you reacted to that competition? So as a startup, who right now you're thinking I'm going to launch, you have to really look at what your competition is doing. Right now, your competition is asleep at the switch because they don't know you exist. Yeah. But again, some of them may be watching you too. I say, Alexandra's about to start a business. Maybe we should do something. You always look at your competition from the standpoint of whatever you're doing, what can I counter? Now, this is the way I like to think about merchandising. You can go head to head with them, which is costly, or you can find a way around them, or even have what's called a unique value proposition, something that makes you more different than your competition that gives you a competitive edge. So this is something, again, you're going to be looking at each of the products that you have in line. What is my competitive advantage in my product line as compared to my competition, which I can take advantage of? So right now we have this egg crisis, right? So if you have an ingredient that is a product that requires eggs, what's going to happen? You think? You're either going to run out of inventory because you don't have enough eggs, or you're going to have to raise your prices because the price of eggs went up. And one of the things you might want to start to think about is, do I need to pivot into one of my other lines that doesn't need any eggs or any special ingredients? So this is, again, competitive activity. What are you doing? You have to watch them. The economic conditions is another area that you have to really take a hard look at. You have to sort of what's happening right now. The economy is in flux. I've attended several workshops on economic situations, and all the two of them I attended from national as well as local said that the economy is in flux. So again, this is something you have to take a look at. When I do my sales forecast, do I go aggressive or do I go conservative? This is where, again, a store entrepreneur needs to make this artful decision. Product availability, supply chain is huge right now. The pandemic wrecked the supply chain. Just as that supply chain is beginning to reappear to a normalcy, now we have a set of tariffs being thrown at us. This again will upset the product supply chain. You have to look at your product. What's my supply chain looking at? Take into account this market changes. You then have to go back and say, what's my trend? What adds or what subtraction should I use to modify my forecast? The last one is about our customer demand. Again, you can look at it from a dollar demand standpoint or unit standpoint, cost standpoint, or sales standpoint. I usually, again, go back to look at units. How many units will your customers buy or forecast to buy based on your historical trends and the market considerations that you put in place? So that's the final thing of the sales. And the reason is the first step, once you have this structure of what your sales forecast is like, then you can move into the other three stages. So any questions on where we are right now? Is it? All right. So this is a little question that if you're in business last year, 2024, what was different in the number of promotion days in 2024?
What do you mean by promotional days?
Yeah, so promotional days, days in which you had an opportunity to make a sale.
What is it again now? I'm sorry.
Now, what was different in the number of promotional days in 2024 that is from regular years? Right. It was a leap year. And I bring that up only because it gave companies one extra day of opportunity for sales. And this is what merchandising planning is designed to do, to look at the entire spectrum and say, what days can, you know, like in this case, 2020, it just won't show up again until 2029, I think. But every time you look at your calendar, you sort of translate that into promotional activity, sales forecasting, but then you have to say, all right, to make this happen, to make this sales projection happen, what kind of inventory and stock do I need on hand? And what's the assortment going to be like? And again, we go back to that's the purpose of merchandising, to one, set a parameters of what you expect sales to look like and what promotion opportunities you have. But also at this point, you're going to start to decide what SKUs will I really need? Because you have to look at carrying costs, how much is inventory and costs versus lost sales due to stockouts. Again, I always erred on having just a little bit too much inventory because I don't want to lose customers. Once you lose customers, you may never get them back. And again, the cost of acquiring new customers versus the cost of retaining customers is really low. So again, I usually err on getting a little bit extra stock. Again, this is my own philosophy. So when we make this decision, we look at another triangle, and this is based on what you think you should be doing. There are three types of assortment strategies: narrow and deep, square, broad, and shallow. When we diagram it, it looks like this. So narrow and deep means a few SKUs, but heavy backup. Square means you have a number of SKUs, but you have equal number of backup. Wide and shallow means you have a lot of SKUs, but you don't back them heavily. It all depends on how you intend to run your business, what your customer demand is like. Or you just select one of these because you're gonna have to figure out what's your buffer stock or backup stock. It's the buffer stock and backup stock that runs companies into trouble. It isn't that first facing stock, but it's what's behind it, because that will determine, your profitability. That makes sense. So you as a business owner have to decide which way am I going to strategize my business. Is going to offer a few SKUs, but a lot of inventory so I never run out, or do I do a moderate amount of SKUs and back them up again, not fully, but just make sure I don't run out, or I'm going to offer wide SKUs, very narrow backup. This again is something that you as an owner have to do and decide on. But to help you look at this next slide is like, oh man, that's like a no-brainer today. But I like to bring it up only because when you try to work out the strategy, product availability versus consumer demand, determine the percentage of demand for a particular SKU. You gotta have to know which of your SKUs, and I have a little example in the next couple of slides, is the one that you have to not run out of. So the backup of buffer stock and the model stock plan determines product availability that will satisfy customer demand. Again, you have to look at and totally decide what's the percentage that I want to make sure that I can satisfy my customers. The last one is, again, kind of, oh yeah, duh. But the higher the product demand, the higher the amount of backup stock you have to look at. Now, this is what I want you to consider. If the backup stock is too low, you lose customers and sales. If the backup stock is too high, you risk having too much capital in holding costs. And I, again, usually would go for having a little bit extra stock so that I don't lose customers. Again, you may decide, maybe I want a lot of stock and I'm going to risk, that I want to risk that. I don't care if I have extra stock, but I want to make sure I have 100% fill rate for my customer. You have to decide what this is. And so one of the ways to look at how much backup I should have is higher product, the higher your strategy is, do I want to fill my customer demand to what ratio? 75%, 85%, 90%, 100%. And so you decide it's a risk reward. You risk losing customers, you risk having too much inventory and having that cost. So you decide what your availability rate, but you have to make a decision. What is my guaranteed availability rate? Is it going to be 75%, 85%, 95%, 100%? The other one you have to consider is the fluctuation in demand. Right now, there's going to be, from the workshops that I attended, there's going to be a lot of fluctuation in demand. And the reason is that the economy is starting to be in flux. And when that happens, people will do a lot of things that is going to be interesting. And so from a provider of products, sometimes you can't read them. And right now, eggs are behind, but then it could be something else. I just announced today that there'll be a new tariff on imports on cars. So what do you think that the automotive industry is thinking of right now? So these are things you have to look at. What's, again, the fluctuation in demand given the economic situation? The other one is your vendor. How long lead time does your vendor giving you? Are they saying you have to order 30 days in advance, a week in advance, 90 days in advance? You have to sort of put that into your forecasting, that if you want to have 100% fill and your vendor providing the 100% fill is 90 days, then you sort of have to say, all right, I got to stock up 180 days worth of inventory in my warehouse. Does that make sense? The other one is more fluctuation in lead time. Your vendors are running into the same supply chain problems that you're going to run into. And this is, again, was the biggest problem in 21, 22, and 23. And we were just coming out of 24 was this fluctuation in lead time. So you have to look at your product, what's the ingredients in your product, or what type of parts you need for your product, and look at the different lead times so you can understand how much backup stock you really need. The last one is your lower vendor fill rate. If your vendor is relatively filling you at a good pace, and when I say good pace, when I was running a business, good pace meant they're filling it at 90%. If I ordered 100, I got 90, I was pretty happy. But if your vendor's fill rate is really low, and I say low, is if it's in the 60s to 70s, you might want to look at changing vendors or finding a way to get a better vendor relationships. So these are ways in which you sort of decide what am I going to stock by SKU? How much should I stock based on my sales forecast? And so you might come up with a pattern like this. Narrow and deep, the blue is your best seller. Greens are your next best seller. The pinkish is your third best seller, fourth, and so if you do narrow and deep, this is how it might look. If you do a square, that might look that way. And if you do shallow and a broad and shallow, it might look this way. So this is your stock plan that you go into market with. All of this, you say, all right, I'm going to go into the marketplace with this stock plan. And the other way to look at this is called the ABC analysis. And so you sort of have to look at, all right, I go out with this stock plan. Let me back up a little bit. Let's go back one more back. Let's go back to this guy. So I go out with this stock plan, whether it's narrow and deep, square, or shallow. And then I have to then look at the actual performances, and you're going to have to rank your SKUs. And in this case, you should have a ranking of never be out, should they allow some stock out, or, maybe I should get rid of it. So this bottom is an example. Your A item, 10% of SKUs represents 55% of sales. And some of you out there may have may know by performance that this happens. The next item, 20% of the SKUs represents 25% of sales. Next 50% of SKUs represents 15% of sales. And D items, 20% of SKUs represents 5% of sales. Some of you who have multiple SKUs may already find this. This is a typical pattern for a offering that has multiple product lines. This is typical. So what you want to do is you want to start to decide your backup stuff. So in this case, your high availability, the ones that give you you need it to 55%, you say, I'm never going to be out of this. Is something you might overstock. The next one down, you can lose some sales because they might jump to one of the others, so you're pretty safe. You can have occasional stock out. The next grouping is the ones that you might say, well, yeah, it's maybe I should get stock. I don't really care if I run out of stock because again, I have these two to back me up. And the last one is this is something what a lot of companies don't want to do. They don't want to get rid of a SKU. So my particular advice is if it isn't working, get rid of it fast. And the reason is that you don't want to have stock in your warehouse. And when you look at an item, I want you to look at it from a standpoint, not just the item, but it's money sitting there. Would you take $100, put it on the warehouse floor, and let it sit there for like 60 days? No, you wouldn't. So one of the things you want to do is to get rid of what you decide to be dead stock. Another way to look at it is you look at high sales or contribution or profitability. Again, high, average, or low. You decide how much you're going to be stocking based on sales level or profitability level. And the other way to look at it is, this is really easy. And this is an actor. They teach you this in school. FSN analysis, fast, slow, non-moving. So that's another way to do a simple look at it. Is there any questions right now? I'm taking it. Yeah.
Me again.
Yeah,
So
good.
because I'm thinking about some of the things that you're saying, and like they say, 20% of your effort is going to be like 80% of the profits, and like vice versa. It's like that 80-20 rule. So because I don't have a product and I can't knock anything off, how do you suggest I like talk to customers with that first 500 and then see what they want, introduce like one or two things and like go from there? Or like, because I'm kind of doing it backwards.
Okay. So if you're doing the lean launch method, or lean methodology, you go out and talk to people, you might want to have 3 prospective prototypes, which represents your SKUs. And say, all right, pick your best. Which one did you buy? Which one next? And that gives you an idea. You really won't know until you launch. And you really won't know after launch, you won't know for about 9 months.
Okay.
And the reason I say you won't know until 9 months, because the first 3 months, your relative and friends will buy everything you make.
Okay. Yeah. And
so
that
once you clear your relatives and friends
analyze
out,
it.
then you really know what the pace is going to be like.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. So here's a classic.
Excuse me. There's a couple of questions in the chat too.
Sure.
So, let's see. So relating to inventory, so Larry is asking if you can talk about par inventory levels from which to adjust seasonal inventory levels, including price promotional sales, especially for a signature item featured on the menu. Okay.
So one of the things you want to do is you want to keep a fast-moving item moving. And so when you look at, 2 things happens is that if something's moving fast, you sometimes don't want to put it on a promotion because it's moving around. The other thing is that if you don't do anything, your competition is going to come at you. So what you really want to do is you want to keep and that's why I always looked at units, and there I would associate units and dollars. But if you watch the unit movement, you can adjust promotion or you can adjust pricing to keep the unit movement moving. We'll come to a couple of formulas later on. But that's what you really want to look at. You want to look at unit movement going through your system. Hopefully that sort of answered. And so those adjustments, even though it's your fastest seller, the moment you spot that it's slowing down, you make some kind of adjustment to keep the movement going. And if you have if you have something that's really slow, you do a couple of quick promotions. If that doesn't work, then you get rid of it. So the idea is once you get momentum going in your inventory movement, you got to keep it moving. Whatever you need to do, keep it moving.
Okay, we also have a question in the chat from Reese. So,
Yeah, Reese, yeah. What's
Reese,
what's,
would you
what's the
like to
question?
unmute, or I can read out the question from the chat?
Oh, yeah, read out the question.
Oh yeah. Let me see. So how do you really know if economic problems may leak into your business, such as like, is there a type of avoidance measure you could take, like promotional options during those times, or is it just safer to retreat?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to look at your inventory and get rid of your slow movers. That way you can reinvest that money. And this is something that it's really for small businesses, it's really hard. Oh, yeah, I bought this to resell. I bought it for $10 to resell at 20. You're gonna try and hang on to it. If you hang on to it in economic turmoil, it's gonna cost you more. So get rid of it so you can reinvest in faster moving products. Does that make sense? And here's the thing, this is my philosophy, my only. Don't retreat in times of turmoil. The reason is there's always going to be opportunity. If you retreat, you're going to lose opportunity. Hope they
That's
answer
true.
your
I can
question,
see
Reese.
that.
Yeah. So again, I hope they answer your question. So again, this conversation is based on my philosophy. So you might want to take your own into account. Now this is a classic one. So how do you get inventory imbalance? This is a classic 10. When you buy hot dogs, it's in tens, and when you buy buns, it's 8. And so how he got there was historical production practices. They sell hot dogs by weight, and so they always come up with 10 hot dogs just by weight. And the people who make buns, they have a preference for a particular type of pan, and that's an 8-pan bake. So what happens is that you'll always have 2 hot dogs, franks left over for your buns. Oh, this is how things happen. And you have to all sort of decide how I'm going to balance this out. One way to look at it is through a vendor analysis. And so what you're going to be stocking for your products or creation of your products, you have to look at what's the most vital product in a hot dog. Is it the sausage? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely vital. You also need the bun, and you also might need some kind of mustard and ketchup. What you want to decide is of these 3, which one do I really want to invest and keep in high stock? So when you look at it, you have to sort of look at it in terms of which is the one I really need. And the other way to look at it is which one is going to cost me the most if I don't have it. Is it going to cost me the hot dog, or is it bun, or the price? So when you're looking at your inventory, you have to look at your vendor. And the reason I say you have to look at your vendor is because you have to look at which one of the vendors is going to provide you the vital, essential, desirable you can get anywhere. But which one of these are you going to really want to stock up on? And is it going to cost you a lot of money? That's another decision you have to make. And this is by looking at your vendors. Which one of these vendors are important? Now, this next slide, it might blow a lot of people away, but these are 3 metrics that you really need to know. I'm going to say you need to know the answer to it. So, gross margin return on investment means how much dollars are you getting back for every dollar that you have invested. This is really return on investment, and that's the formula: gross profit divided by average inventory. The one I really looked when I was running companies, I was the merchandising vice president. I looked at inventory turnover, which means how many times have you sold and replenished that inventory? Give you speed. The higher the inventory turns, the greater is your return on investment. The last one is sales to stock ratio, measures how fast your inventory is moving. And so these are the formulas. It says entrepreneur's tip. This is my tip to most of you. Let your accountant calculate the metrics. You have more important things to do that only you can do. All you need to know is what the answer is to each one of those. You don't have to, because calculating this takes up a lot of time. And if you take up a lot of time, you are the entrepreneur, you're the heart of the business, you're the heartbeat of the business. There's a lot of things that only you can do, no one else can. And if you invest too much of your time in doing the calculations, you may miss out opportunity about doing the things that only you can do. So again, hire a good accountant, give them, I want these 3 measurements at the end of every month. They give you a report. These are your measurements. The one you look really hard at is inventory turnover ratio. So that's metrics that matter. So let's get towards the ending of our discussion. And we have another triangle where profits are in jeopardy: storage, shrinkage, and shipping. So again, this area is, again, this is where profits really up and disappear a lot. And for some reason, go, wow, I had a good gross margin, sales were good, but when we subtracted all the expenses, I came out looking not as much as I thought. And then a lot of that profit gets siphoned away because of these 3 particular areas. So let's take a look at inventory storage. A couple of hints real fast. Take advantage of vertical height, but stay within safety limits. The reason is you pay rent, if you're paying rent or you pay any kind of fee, you're being charged basically by square footage. So if you can take advantage of vertical height, cubic feet, then you're coming ahead on the rent that you're paying. A lot of times I walk into warehouses. I used to manage warehouses where there was 50,000 to 35,000 square feet, and I walk into a warehouse that was under my management, but I wasn't there all the time, and I see that the square footage was being used up by a couple of empty, a couple of boxes. You're paying rent on square footage. You maximize your square footage rent by going vertical. Go straight up. Also have a system, or it has to be an orderly system, whether it's FIFO, first in, first out, LIFO, last in, first out, ABC, which is what we talked about, or just in time. You have to have a system, whether you have a 10 by 10 warehouse, wow, just small. No matter what size of your warehouse, you need to have a very orderly way to get your stocks in and out, so that what happens is that if you don't have an orderly way of getting it in or out, you might end up with a lot of things that's going to cost you money. As an instance, when we get to shrinkage, one of the biggest ways shrinkage occurs is people don't know that the box is there because they put it in the wrong place. So to solve that, you have a storage map. Remember how small your warehouse, have a storage map. Mark the storage spaces with that map and store everything to the map. So at any given time, you can find it or you can audit it. Next one is employ inventory technology you can afford. One of the things you want to have is some kind of technology to help you manage your inventory in your warehouse. There's a lot of inexpensive ones. It is a policy of the Wahoo Value-Added Product Development Center not to mention any particular product or brand, so I'm going to let you look at it. But before you incur an inventory technology, find out if you can afford it. The other thing that happens is that they might say, oh, look at your business in 10 years. And this is my personal advice. Get an inventory technology you can afford now and look at a relatively small future. Because if you buy a system that says you're going to need it in 10 years, you might not be in business. So look at your money. Sort fastest moving items close to the shipping area. And this is, again, something I've walked into warehouses, and the fastest moving items are way in the back. You're losing very precious efficiency in that way. Keep accurate records, schedule audits. Now, I really like the idea of rolling inventory checks. It means most people take a warehouse inventory once a year. Rolling inventory means you may take, if you have 5 inventory spots, you inventory one every 2 months, just to see if your record keeping is in check. You don't have to do the entire warehouse, just parts of it to see if your record keeping is in check. Otherwise, as soon as you get the inventory, store it. The reason is that if you just leave it lying around, it invites shrinkage. It invites theft. It invites putting things in the wrong place. It invites a lot of problems if you let it sit around for a while before you start to store it. The last thing on inventory storage, watch for dusty boxes. As soon as you walk into your warehouse and you spot a dusty box, that means that box isn't selling. The item in the box isn't selling. So put it into why isn't it selling, and then put it into maybe a get rid of it consideration. So any question on storage? No? Okay. Let's get over to shipping. One of the biggest things happens in shipping is that you overpack your boxes. So target the smallest package dimension possible. Your shipping you're being charged based on size of the box and the weight of it. Whichever is greater in charge, that's what you're going to be charged. The size of that box or the weight of the box. So what you want to do is you want to have the smallest package dimension possible. And the other one, you want to use packing material that is relatively light. As an example, corrugated boxes are lighter than if you use cardboard boxes, and polymailers. A lot of people put things in boxes where they could be using polymailers. Those envelopes with the bubble wraps inside of it. So you might want to look at those things. Use flat rate boxes when possible, and always maximize the amount of products that's in those boxes. Look for free packaging, and this sounds bad, but I go to the post office a lot and grab some boxes because they're free. And sometimes I mail to the post office, but I do other things with it. This is the other one. If you have a large, heavy orders, you may want to split them up into smaller shipments to spread out the weight over multiple shipments with lower rates. And this is something that will help if you have a large quantity to ship. You might find it cheaper if you just broke it up and you shipped it in smaller packages, which then gets smaller rates. Look for discounted shipping supplies. Try to use local deliveries. There's a lot of freight forwarders all over the islands. Try to use them first. And the reason I say that is they negotiate. The freight forwarders will negotiate, where the other national chains do not negotiate. So when I think about that, the last thing is instead of shipping, you might want to offer customer pickup discounts. This is something that's kind of interesting, is that shipping can be a costly part of your overall pricing. And if that pricing, shipping can be as high as 20% of your overall price. So if you offer a 10% discount for pickup, customer saves 10%, you save 10%. So again, whenever possible, offer customer pickup discounts. That's in shipping. These are the 5 major causes of shrinkage. Theft, external and internal. They don't steal stuff. So the prevention, strengthen your security and train employees. Strengthening security means put something up, or at least, not just signs, but put something up that's reasonable in terms of your ability to pick. Could be a Ring doorbell, it doesn't matter. But you have to have some security and strengthen it. Most importantly, you need to train your employees. One of the things that happens is that if the employee knows, are trained into spotting theft, they will be more than likely not to steal. Because if everybody's trained to spot theft, then guess what? There's no opportunity to steal. So invest in training your employees. Administrative errors in record keeping. This is simple. Invest in employee training and incentive. Set a goal. If we have 90% fill rate, you get a pizza, whatever it is. When you incentivize, when you train employees and you incentivize them to perform well, they perform well, and these mistakes don't happen. Misplaced inventory. Again, use the warehouse maps, accurate record keeping, train the employees. Inefficient inventory, upgrade your system. Again, find a system that you can afford, but then train your employees. You can see a trend. Train your employees. So many times, these inventory shrinkage areas can be minimized simply by training employees. So look into it and train employees. For vendor fraud, this is something is important. Strengthen vendor relations. If you're doing business with China and you're doing substantial business with China, you need a guanji. Guanji is a go-between. So in Chinese business relationships, a guanji is an intermediary who builds relationships between your company and whoever the manufacturer is of your products that you offer. So again, look at strengthening your vendor relationship, because these are the 5 major causes of shrinkage, and each one of them can be minimized. You can't eliminate it. It's not going to happen. But you can minimize it simply by looking at, one, the most important part is training your employees. We're almost at the end. So let me get to the last areas. And this is taking your dead and moving stocks, your lemon, and creating it into a lemonade. And then you do that by taking that lemon of a dead stock and using it in multiple ways in terms of a bundle promotion. A bundle promotion means I'm going to get a good selling item, and then I'm going to stick a bad selling item, a slow moving item, and sell both of them at a price that reflects a great savings to the customer. And you'll find people, all right, I like that idea, and then they'll buy it. BOGO means buy one, get one. It could be buy one, get one free, buy one, get one half off. And that's another way to associate slow movers with fast movers by using BOGOs. The last one is the next one is customer incentive tiered. If they buy so many things, you might want to give them, that slow moving item. Again, slow moving item just means you're slow. It doesn't mean it's, bad stuff, but you have to use that slow moving item to build additional businesses. And that's the idea behind this concept. Customer loyalty rewards. You got a good customer that always comes in or always paid on time. They're always there. You want to give them something. And one of the things you might want to give them is this, this item that hasn't been moving to you, but they find valuable. Give them as a loyalty reward. Also, there's always opportunities to run an anniversary or some special event and give it away as a prize. And the last thing you want to do is you donate to charitable causes. The one thing you don't want to do is to write it off. Writing it off is just like I give up and that's it. You wrote it off. When you can create something that is a lemon to help you grow your business. And these are strategies that can help you grow your business by using that slow moving product. Any questions right now? Any questions? Huh? All right, with that, a couple more slides. This is just about 6:30. So there is limited one-on-one complimentary consultation with myself, either in person or in Zoom. And it comes with all of you who have come tonight. Consult the Value Added Product Development Center for an appointment. And you can contact me and we'll set up a meeting. And for those of you in Maui and the Big Island, it'll be a Zoom. I had a Zoom meeting with Reese a couple of weeks ago. So I invite you all to sit down and talk story with me. Also, we have a lot of exciting things happening at the Value Added Product Development Center. If you're on Oahu, we want you to schedule a visit because we want you to see all the exciting things. And Naomi is a part of those exciting events happening at the center. So schedule a tour with us today. And with that, it's just about 6:30. And thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope I was helpful in helping you with your business. Is there any questions or anything that you'd like to ask at this point?
I have another one.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You said that this was a series. Is there a way that we can access the ones that you've already done?
Yeah, there's recordings of everyone who've done that. So the last one I did was aligning your customer with your company or this point, staying in contact with them. The one I did in December was pricing and promotions.
Okay, and I can just find those on the Wahiwa value added like website.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where it's
great.
posted.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Actually, all of the past webinars are on the Leeward Community College YouTube channel.
Perfect.
Drop the link into the chat here. Yeah, and also, Dag, we didn't get to one of the questions that was in the chat. That has to do with the storage topic. So the question is, what about perishable inventory storage?
Okay, for perishable, what you would look at is, again, you'd look at which is the most, which is obvious, but which is the most costliest of those perishables. And so this is a case where, if you're having the sausage and a hot dog, and the bun, which one would cost you the most if you lost it? Would be the sausage. So that's the one you would focus on. And you would, you invest in some kind of refrigeration system or some kind of promotion to move it faster. Because the buns, they have a limited life. But when you're looking at perishables, I want you to focus on the cost of each of the perishables and focus on preserving the ones that is the highest in cost. Hope that helped.
Thank you.
You want me to put the rest of the check?
I have another question too. What are your thoughts on spreadsheet type of system for managing inventory versus an actual system? I don't trust the spreadsheets because I don't trust myself, but I know many multi-million dollar companies use that. So yeah, I just want to get your take on it.
So I would go to looking at multiple types of software and look at one that you can afford. Spreadsheet is good, but again, it takes a lot of manual, and you might, sometimes you might forget to put something in. That's why it's so inaccurate.
Yeah.
So again, you look at it, but if you can't afford any of it, go back to the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yeah, the inventory systems aren't cheap.
No,
And
they're not.
it's frustrating because that's all the stuff I want to track right now. And then the whole spreadsheet idea just stresses me out. Like I'll forget something. You know what I mean? So anyway, thank you.
So one of the ways you can look at it is you can look at sort of systems that will input the data with one entry point, with one entry. There's a couple of them out there you might want to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great question. Any more? If not, I really appreciate all you coming. Again, it is now 6:35. And if you haven't had dinner, go out and have dinner and have a great time. And I hope to see you soon in another Lean Lots workshop. So thank you again for coming. And for those of you from Big Island and those of you from Maui, thanks for joining in. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for all your insights.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so